The chamber was cold, filled with strange blue lights that pulsed from walls made of metal and glass. Machines hummed like restless beasts, their voices mixing with the sound of alien voices speaking in sharp tones. In the middle of the room stood 6 humans, taken from different corners of Earth without warning, each chained to a glowing platform. Their eyes scanned the place with fear and confusion, but none spoke. Above them, behind thick glass, a group of alien scientists watched closely. They were tall, thin, with gray skin, and too many eyes that never blinked. For them this was routine, another species to measure, another number to record. But tonight was not routine, though they did not know it yet. One of the aliens adjusted. A machine that looked like a cage of light began the evaluation, it said in its own language, though the humans could not understand. The machine came alive, wrapping beams of green energy around the humans, scanning every heartbeat, every breath, every drop of fear in their blood. The screens began to fill with numbers. The aliens waited for results, expecting limits like always. Every creature had a breaking point. Every mind had a wall that could not be passed. Yet as the machine worked, the numbers rose higher and higher, faster than the aliens had ever seen. A young human, barely 20, clenched his fists as the energy pressed against his skin. He thought of his family, of the night sky above his home before he was taken. The machine reacted strangely, as if confused by what it felt. His heart was racing, but his body refused to break. Another human, an older woman with scars on her arms, lifted her chin and stared back at the glass where the alien stood. Her eyes did not look afraid. Instead, they looked angry, and the anger made the readings spike. The scientist leaned closer, tapping controls, wondering why their perfect device was failing to measure simple creatures. The room grew hotter. Sparks snapped from the wires. The main screen showed symbols flashing red. One alien muttered that the humans must be defective. Another said the machines must be calibrated again. They did not want to admit what was clear: the humans were pushing beyond the scale itself. So the machine had measured hundreds of species before. It had never failed. But tonight, the graphs stretched upward until they bent against the edge of the display. The scientists raised the power. The beams grew stronger, pressing pain into the humans' bodies. It was enough to make most creatures scream and collapse. Instead, the humans resisted in strange ways. One man began to laugh, a broken laugh that made even his fellow captives uneasy. Another closed his eyes and whispered a prayer, steadying himself against the burning pressure. Each reaction twisted the readings into new chaos. The machine expected fear to look like fear, pain to look like weakness. But humans were not following the rules. Their fear turned into stubbornness. Their pain turned into defiance. Behind the glass, the alien commander narrowed all 4 of them. Its eyes. Increase intensity, it ordered. We will see where they break. New machines lowered from the ceiling, dripping with silver needles and glowing panels. Electricity began to surge. The platforms shook under the humans' feet. Yet still, they stood, some trembling, some sweating, but none falling. The young human, who had been silent until now, lifted his head and shouted, though the aliens could not understand his words. But the tone carried power. His voice was not of a victim, it was a challenge. The machines built to read biology did not know how to measure that sound. The room filled with alarms. One of the consoles burst in smoke. Aliens rushed to contain the failure, their long fingers slapping at controls, but the humans only grew stronger. The scientist monitoring the numbers froze, staring at the impossible. The humans were not just resisting, they were climbing higher, as if every second of pressure made them harder to control. There was no ceiling to their endurance. The machine's limit was reached, and still the humans pushed forward. One of the aliens whispered something none of the others wanted to hear. Perhaps the error is not in the machine. Perhaps the error is in our belief that they can be measured. But the commander silenced the voice. It was easier to believe the tools were broken than to accept the truth unfolding before them. The older woman suddenly pulled against her restraints, and with a sound like cracking stone, one of the clamps broke. The aliens gasped. That had never happened. The machines were designed to hold beasts 10 times stronger. She should not have been able to move at all, yet the restraint dangled useless at her side, and her burning eyes told the aliens what they refused to admit. This was not the end of the test. This was only the beginning. The scientists backed away from the glass. As sparks rained from the ceiling, the alarms grew louder, and the machines that were supposed to measure limits were collapsing into chaos. For the first time, the aliens felt a weight in their own chests. A strange echo of fear they had only ever seen in their test subjects. Because in that cold chamber, surrounded by broken numbers and shattered steel, they realized something terrible. The humans had not even begun to fight back. When they did, no machine in the galaxy would be able to measure what was coming. The alarms did not stop. They screamed through the vast alien laboratory like sirens from a collapsing city. The platforms where the humans stood glowed brighter, their edges cracking under pressure. Alien scientists shouted over one another, their voices sharp with fear. Yet they tried to keep their movements calm. Order was their shield. Data was their comfort. They believed that if they only adjusted the right controls, the chaos could be explained. But the truth was no machine in their arsenal could explain what was happening in front of them. The restraints on the older woman had snapped like brittle wire. She stood with her chest heaving, sweat sliding down her face. Yet her eyes never left the glass where the aliens stared back. One by one, the other humans saw her break free, and something shifted in their faces. Their fear, the deep animal terror that the machines tried to feed on, began to fade. In its place came something the aliens had no numbers for: hope. Even chained, even trapped, hope made the humans stronger. The commander's voice cut through the confusion. Restrain the subjects, reinforce containment, and raise the scale. A second machine descended from the ceiling, massive and black, humming with terrible energy. The aliens called it the core measurer, a device reserved only for species. Marked as dangerous, could simulate fire, drowning, starvation, even the crushing pull of a black hole. No creature had lasted longer than 4 minutes inside its field. The scientists prepared to activate it, confident this time the humans would break. The beams lashed out again, red and violent, wrapping the humans in burning light. A young man screamed as energy raced along his skin, his legs shaking violently, but he did not fall. Another human dropped to his knees, his breath ragged, yet he kept clawing against the restraints until his hands bled. Each second stretched longer than the last, the kind of seconds that kill weaker creatures. But the humans endured. Their bodies looked close to collapse, yet something inside refused to surrender. The machines marked impossible spikes of activity brain. Waves peaking, hearts beating past safe limits, muscles straining at levels that should destroy them. The data looked like madness. Then something unexpected happened. The one who had screamed began to laugh. Da-da-da. His laugh was raw, broken, but it spread like fire. The others heard it, and despite their pain, they started to grin. They had been pushed to the edge of despair, yet instead of breaking, they found strength in mocking the very system that sought to crush them. The laughter filled the chamber, a sound the aliens had never heard from a subject in torment. The machines froze, unsure how to translate the sound. Was it madness? Was it defiance? Or was it something worse? Something that meant the humans were beyond the scale entirely. One of the consoles sparked again, and numbers raced across the screens until they vanished into blank light. The system could no longer read. An alien scientist slammed its claw against the controls, shrieking that the readings were corrupted. But the commander leaned forward, all 4 of its eyes narrowing, and whispered, "No, the readings are true. They are going higher." The core measurer pushed harder. The walls vibrated, cracks spreading along the glass. Energy roared around. The humans like a storm. Their screams mixed with their laughter, their rage and their silence. One of them, a soldier with scars across his jaw, spat blood on the floor and whispered through clenched teeth, "Is that all you've got?" The words meant nothing to the aliens, but the tone struck deeper than any translation. Then came the first true break. A second restraint snapped, the metal tearing like cloth. A young woman tore her arm free, her skin blistered, but her grip steady. She yanked against the second shackle until it shattered too. Her cry echoed through the chamber, raw and victorious. The other humans saw her, and strength surged through them again. The impossible was happening not once but twice. Behind the glass, the scientists trembled. "We cannot continue this," one said. "They are rewriting the test." But the commander did not answer. It was staring at the humans, its body stiff with a realization it did not want to accept. They were not being tested anymore. They were testing the machines. Another alarm blared. Systems across the lab flickered, lights dying in showers of sparks. The power grid itself could not hold against the energy the humans were pulling from somewhere deep inside themselves. Every species had limits. Every mind could be measured. But the humans were not stopping. Their willpower bent the readings. Upward until the machines shook with the strain. And then, in one terrible moment, the core measurer screamed like a dying beast. Its frame shuddered, plates ripping apart, circuits bursting in flame. Final burst of energy filled the chamber. But instead of crushing the humans, it shattered their restraints. Chains fell to the floor, glowing red, useless. The smoke cleared slowly. The humans stood free, their eyes wild, their chests heaving. Burned, bruised, scarred but standing. They looked not like test subjects, but like predators who had just smelled blood. Behind the glass, silence filled the control room. No alien dared move. They had measured humanity with their greatest machines, and the machines had broken. The commander finally spoke, its voice lower than a whisper. "They are beyond the scale." And in that silence, the humans took their first step forward. The test was over. The real danger was just beginning. The silence in the lab felt heavier than the smoke still hanging in the air. The humans stood free of their restraints, their bodies shaking, but their eyes alive with something no machine had been able to record. Across the glass wall, the aliens froze like statues, their hands hovering above controls they no longer trusted. They had seen subjects resist before. They'd even seen desperate creatures claw for survival. But they had never seen this. These humans had not only survived the core measurer, they had broken it. To the aliens, this was not just failure. This was terror. The commander tried to regain order. Its voice echoed across the chamber in sharp commands that rattled in the air. "Seal the lab. Deploy security drones." At once, metal panels in the ceiling slid open, and small black machines dropped into the chamber. They unfolded into spider-like shapes with glowing red eyes and humming energy weapons. The drones moved with mechanical precision, circling the humans like predators. The aliens believed control had been restored. But they did not understand what had already shifted. The humans did not back away. Their shoulders tensed, their breathing steadied, and though their bodies were still bruised and burned, they looked ready to fight. The older woman raised her hand slowly, pointing at the drones. "They think machines will stop us," she whispered to the others. Her words carried no weight for the aliens listening, but the other humans heard and understood. The machines that were meant to measure them had failed. The machines meant to kill them would fail too. The drones moved in. Energy beams flashed, burning across the floor where the humans stood. One man dove to the side, rolling across the scorched metal and slammed his fist into the nearest drone. His hand bled, but the drone cracked, sparks bursting from its shell. Another human grabbed a piece of broken restraint from the ground and swung it like a weapon, smashing a drone against the wall. The fight was chaotic, desperate. Yet there was something strange about it. The humans were not trained for this kind of battle. They had no weapons, no armor. But their unpredictability, the wildness in their movements, confused the drones. The machines could not calculate what had no pattern. Behind the glass, scientists shouted warnings. Their efficiency is climbing. Their pain responses are twisted. Every time they're hurt, their performance increases. They scrambled to lock doors and activate more traps, but the commander felt a weight it had not felt in centuries. Fear. The drones were designed to contain violent predators, yet here they were, collapsing one after another against unarmed captives. The humans did not fight with precision, they fought with fury. And fury was something the machines could not predict. A soldier with the scarred jaw caught a drone by its legs, pulling it down with a roar, then slammed it against the floor until it shattered. Another human, the young man who had first laughed, during the test, grabbed a sparking cable from the wall and whipped it across two drones, frying their circuits. Their movements were reckless, yet every strike landed with a force born from survival, not strategy. The aliens stared in disbelief as the numbers flashing across the surviving screens told the truth. The human strength was no longer measurable. When the last drone fell in sparks and smoke, the chamber went still again. The humans stood in the center, battered but alive, their chests rising and falling in heavy rhythm. They were no longer test subjects. They were free. Their eyes turned toward the glass wall where the aliens huddled. The older woman raised her chin, her gaze burning through the barrier. For the first time, the scientists felt like the ones being observed. The commander barked an order to release the containment gas. Hidden vents in the ceiling hissed open, spilling thick green mist into the chamber. It was poison designed to paralyze and suffocate any living creature. The aliens pressed against the glass, waiting for the humans to collapse. But instead of falling, the humans covered their mouths, tearing strips from their clothing, pressing them against their faces, crouching low to the floor. They adapted instantly, without needing direction. The poison spread, but they endured, coughing and choking, yet crawling forward step by step. The gas was supposed to end this quickly. Instead, it became another machine that failed to stop. The scientists panicked. They are not dying. The dosage is maximum, one screamed. The commander's voice cracked for the first time as it shouted back, "Then nothing can kill them." It stared at the glass, watching as the humans rose through the green mist like shadows climbing out of hell. Their eyes glowed faintly in the haze, sharp and determined. One of the humans picked up the remains of a drone, holding it like a weapon, and pointed it toward the glass. They had no idea how thick the barrier was, no idea if they could break it, but it did not matter. They were no longer afraid of walls, of machines, of tests. They had discovered the truth about themselves in this lab. There was no scale that could hold them. The glass suddenly shook as the soldier slammed the drone. Wreckage against it. A crack spread like lightning across the surface. The aliens stumbled back in shock. The second strike widened the crack, the sound echoing like thunder. The scientists shouted for evacuation, but the doors were sealed to keep the humans trapped. Now the trap had reversed. The humans struck together, smashing against the glass again and again, their combined fury breaking what was supposed to be unbreakable. With one final crash, the glass wall shattered into a storm of shards falling across the control room. The aliens screamed as the humans stepped through the opening, their silhouettes dark against the failing lights. For the first time, the roles were reversed. The scientists, once so confident, once the hunters, now looked like prey. The fear in the lab no longer belonged to the humans. It belonged to the ones who had dared to measure them. And as the humans advanced, battered and furious, one thought settled into the minds of every alien present. The test had never measured humanity. Humanity was measuring them. The shards of glass still glittered on the floor like pieces of a broken star, crunching under the humans' bare feet as they stepped into the control room. The aliens backed away, their many eyes wide with disbelief. These creatures were supposed to be numbers on a chart, predictable entries in a database. Instead, they had torn through drones, shattered unbreakable walls, and now stood in the very heart of the lab. The commander raised its voice, forcing calm into a tone that wavered beneath the weight of fear. "Do not panic. They are injured, exhausted. They cannot last." But the word sounded hollow even to its own kind. The humans were injured, yes. Their bodies carried burns, bruises, and bleeding wounds. Yet the way they moved told a different truth. Their steps were heavy but steady. Their eyes shone not with weakness, but with fire. The older woman, the first to break her restraints, scanned the room. Banks of controls blinked in confusion. Screens frozen on corrupted readings. She spotted the aliens huddled in the corner, their long limbs shaking, and a strange calm came over her. She did not speak their language, but she understood something deeper. They feared her. For the first time since her abduction, the fear in the room belonged to someone else, the younger man, the one who had laughed during the pain tests, bent down and grabbed a jagged piece of broken glass. He held it like a knife, his knuckles white, and gave a grin that unsettled even his fellow humans. "We're not their experiment anymore," he muttered. The others nodded. It was not a plan, but a shared instinct. They would not be measured again. The aliens scrambled to recover control. Panels lit up with commands, alarms screeched again, and steel shutters began to drop over the exits. But the humans moved faster. The soldier with the scarred jaw hurled the remains of a drone at the console, smashing it into sparks. A woman ripped wires from a panel, shorting out the door controls. Every act of destruction was raw, messy, and unpredictable. The aliens had built their empire on logic and calculation. Humans were showing them chaos, and chaos was winning. One scientist shouted, "Their biology cannot explain this." "Their limits are gone?" Another snapped back. "There is no variable for this behavior. They do not react like other species." Their voices cracked with panic as they argued, because admitting the truth meant undoing centuries of belief that everything living could be measured, controlled, reduced to numbers. Yet the humans, bloodied and furious, proved otherwise. With every step, the commander slammed its claws on the central console, activating the lab's last defense. From the ceiling dropped long metallic arms, tipped with claws and glowing blades. The arms whipped through the air, striking at the humans with machine precision. Sparks flew as they sliced into walls and shattered consoles. The humans ducked, dodged, and scrambled, their movements sloppy, but full of raw instinct. A blade slashed across the young man's shoulder, spraying blood. He staggered but did not fall. Instead, he grabbed the arm, screaming with rage, and pulled with every ounce of strength until the machine screeched and tore apart. The sight sent shivers through the aliens. He had just ripped down something designed to cut through armored beasts. The older woman shouted, "Together." "Ah!" The humans moved as one. They tore wires, swung broken parts of drones, and hurled themselves at the mechanical arms. Their attacks had no rhythm, no strategy, yet somehow they worked. Each strike was born from desperation, anger, or sheer stubborn will. The aliens stared in horror as their final weapon system collapsed under the madness of human unpredictability. The machines sparked and died, falling in twisted heaps. The lab's defenses were gone. Silence followed, broken only by the heavy breaths of the humans. Smoke filled the air, glowing red in the emergency lights. The aliens shrank back, their gray skin trembling. The commander spoke again, though its voice was now more plea than command. "Stop this. You do not understand what you are." But the humans did understand. They understood they were not numbers, not test subjects, not creatures to be measured by machines. They understood something deeper, that the one thing the aliens could never calculate was human will. Courage, anger, love, hope, despair, all of it burned inside them, shifting from one moment to the next. No formula could capture it. No scale could hold it. That was what made them terrifying. The young woman with the torn shackles stepped forward. Her voice was hoarse, but her words cut through the smoke. "You tried to measure us, but you missed the part that matters." She didn't need to explain. The humans had already proven it. Every moment they endured, every wall they broke, was proof that their strength did not come from number Z, came from refusing to accept limits. One of the scientists whispered to another. Its many eyes locked on the humans. "They are the unmeasurable factor." The phrase spread like a sickness among them, passed in hushed voices. The unmeasurable factor, the variable that could not be controlled. It was a truth more dangerous than any broken machine. The commander tried to silence them, but even it could not ignore the fear twisting in its chest. For centuries, its kind had trusted their machines to define reality, but reality was standing in front of them now, bleeding yet unbroken, proving that no machine could ever predict what a human would do when cornered. The humans pressed forward. The aliens retreated, scrambling against the wall like insects seeking escape. The older woman glanced at the broken panels, the shattered drones, the useless claws, and for the first time she smiled. It was not a smile of victory, but of certainty. They had taken everything from her, her freedom, her peace, her safety, but they had failed to take away her will. And as the humans moved deeper into the control room, stepping over the ruins of machines and the trembling aliens, one truth echoed in every mind present. Humanity was not a species that could be measured. Humanity was the chaos that broke the scale. The control room was no longer the clean, silent place it had been when the tests began. The floor was covered in broken glass and sparking wires. The machines hissed and spat smoke. The once proud scientists huddled against the walls as if waiting for judgment. The humans stood in the center of the wreckage, battered and bleeding but unbroken. Their eyes were wild, their movements sharp and restless, like predators that had just escaped the cage. The air carried a strange weight, one that even the aliens could feel because the experiment they had built so carefully was no longer theirs to control. It was collapsing around them, and the very subjects they thought to measure had become its destroyers. The commander tried to gather its courage. Its voice trembled but reached for authority. Contain them. Contain them now. The order was meaningless. The machines were broken. The drones were destroyed. The poisonous gas still hung in the air but had failed to stop the humans. Nothing remained to obey the commander's words. The scientists glanced at each other, their many eyes flashing with panic. One whispered, "We are trapped with them." Another hissed back, "No, we are trapped by them." The older woman stepped forward, her feet crunching on glass, her body scarred but upright. She looked at the aliens, not with fear but with something colder, something sharper judgment. The young man who had laughed through the pain dragged, a broken panel of metal across the floor, his makeshift weapon screeching like a warning. The soldier with the scarred jaw leaned against a ruined console, his breathing heavy, his blood dripping, yet his posture still strong. Every human carried exhaustion, but exhaustion only made their resolve harder, more desperate. The commander realized the danger. The humans were no longer test subjects. They were survivors in enemy territory. And survivors fought differently than soldiers. Survivors had nothing left to lose. It activated the emergency beacon, a shrill sound that echoed through the complex. Somewhere far above, deep within the alien ship, soldiers and guards would hear the call. Reinforcements would come with armor, weapons, and firepower that no unarmed captives could resist. The commander clung to that thought like a drowning creature clings to driftwood, but the humans did not panic at the sound. Instead, their heads lifted, their eyes narrowing. They understood enough the beacon meant more enemies were coming. The older woman spoke softly, her voice rough from smoke. "Then we move before they arrive." The others nodded, instinct guiding them. Had no map, no weapons, no plan. But they had momentum. The momentum was something no machine could calculate. They advanced into the hall beyond the shattered glass, their steps echoing in unison. The corridors were long and bright, filled with pulsing lights and silent panels. The humans did not pause to study them. They ripped open doors, smashed screens, and tore cables loose, leaving destruction behind with every step. The scientists inside the control room watched the monitors go black one by one, helpless as their subjects spread chaos through the heart of the lab. The experiment was crumbling faster than they could understand. When the first squad of alien guards arrived, the clash was violent and sudden. Tall figures in armored suits, carrying sleek rifles, stormed the hall with precision. They expected captives broken by tests. Instead, they found humans charging at them with nothing but shards of metal and fury. The guards fired beams of energy, but the humans dodged with reckless instinct, rolling, lunging, swinging wildly. One beam seared across the young man's side, burning deep, but he pushed forward, slamming his broken panel into the guard's helmet until the creature fell. Another human grabbed the rifle from its claws, the alien weapon unfamiliar but heavy in her hands. She pulled the trigger once, twice, the beams lashing out, not with precision but with pure rage. The guards faltered. Their training had no space. For enemies like this, they were used to creatures that fought with predictable instinct, not enemies that turned wounds into fuel. One guard fell, then another, until the squad was broken. The humans, now armed with stolen weapons, pressed forward without hesitation. Behind them, the lab shook with fire and alarms. Ahead of them, more soldiers gathered. The experiment had become a battlefield. The scientists panicked. "We must shut it all down," one cried. "Purge the data. Destroy the evidence." They clawed at consoles, erasing files, but the screens only glitched and froze. The system was collapsing under the strain of chaos. The data they had collected, proof of humanity's defiance, was unraveling like everything else. The commander slammed its claws against the console again, shouting, "The experiment is finished. Now we fight for survival." Down in the corridors, the humans felt the same truth. The tests, the numbers, the scales, they were gone. What remained was simple: survival. They fought as survivors always had, with fury, with cunning, and with unity. Each wound they suffered only sharpened their will. Each death of an alien guard fed their fire. The lab, once a place of control and calculation, had become a storm of human chaos. Tearing apart the foundations of the alien empire's pride, the older woman paused in a hallway, her weapon smoking in her hands. She looked at the others, their faces streaked with blood and soot. And she understood something even the aliens could not grasp. They were not just breaking machines, they were breaking belief. The belief that everything in the galaxy could be measured, contained, and controlled. That belief was collapsing, piece by piece, with every drone shattered, every weapon stolen, every guard defeated, and as the humans pressed forward, deeper into the alien complex, the final truth became clear to everyone who watched from the control room. The experiment had collapsed, but what was rising in its place was far worse, for it was something no machine could predict, no chart could hold, no empire could contain. It was humanity, unmeasured and unleashed. The chamber shook with a low hum as the machines tried one last time to calculate the human resistance. Numbers flashed in the air, streams of glowing data forming symbols no alien could read fast enough. Then, without warning, the data collapsed into nonsense. Lines of equations twisted on themselves, breaking apart into unreadable chaos. The observers gasped. The oldest among them, a being who had witnessed the collapse of 3 empires, whispered that this had never happened before. For the first time, their instruments were useless. The humans had broken the very scale built to measure the limits of life. Inside the glass chamber, Daniel stood with his chest rising and falling, sweat dripping from his face. His body trembled, not from weakness, but from the violent surge of strength still running through him. The restraints around his arms hung broken, bent metal glowing faintly from the force he had used. His eyes locked on the alien overseers above, and for a moment, silence ruled the hall. Then a single thought spread among the observers, silent, but heavy. If the machines could not measure this creature, then how could they ever control him? The lead examiner, a tall figure with eyes like shifting oil, stepped forward. It raised its hand, and the chamber walls began to close in. It was their final test, the crushing pressure designed to reduce any life form into atoms. The walls glowed with white heat, pulling closer with a sound like grinding mountains. Daniel clenched his fists and braced himself. His body screamed with pain as the chamber pressed inward. Its bones felt like they might crack. His lungs fought for air, but something deep inside him refused to break. The thought of Earth, of the people who had been taken before him, fueled his strength. He roared, a sound so raw and powerful it pierced even the thick walls. The chamber shuddered. The walls, built from alien alloys said to be indestructible, vibrated and then stopped. The force holding them in motion flickered, then collapsed. Sparks burst from the control panels above, raining down on the observers. The overseers backed away, shocked. No test chamber had ever failed. The human was no longer just surviving the trials, he was rewriting their very meaning. Alarms blared across the complex. Red light spilled into the hall as the observers called. For containment, soldiers in black armor poured in, their weapons raised. Each weapon was designed to burn through starship hulls, but Daniel did not flinch. He looked at them with eyes full of fury. The first shot was fired, a beam of energy that cut through the air like lightning. Daniel moved faster than they expected, his body fueled by the strange strength the machines had awakened, but failed to measure. The beam missed. Daniel leaped forward, slamming into the nearest soldier with a force that sent the alien flying against the wall. Armor snapping like thin glass. Chaos filled the room. Beams of light crisscrossed the chamber, but Daniel kept moving, weaving through them with instincts even he did not fully understand. He grabbed one of the broken restraints and swung it like a weapon, knocking aside soldiers as if they were nothing. Every move he made was a message. Humans could not be contained. They could not be measured. The lead examiner screamed for retreat, its voice sharp and filled with fear. The observers who once watched with cold curiosity now scrambled. For the exits, the machines, still sparking with broken data, tried to recalculate. But every number they produced only ended in the same result, undefined. Daniel stood in the center of the ruined chamber, chest heaving, surrounded by the wreckage of soldiers and broken machines. The alarms echoed around him, but he no longer cared. He had seen the fear in their eyes, the fear of something they could not control. He realized now that he was not just fighting for himself. Every human they had captured, every test they had run, every cruel calculation they trusted it, was all built on the belief that humans could be measured and limited. But he had proved them wrong. The walls of the hall began to split open as massive doors slid apart, revealing the dark expanse beyond. Stars glittered through the glass of the station windows, and Daniel understood where he was far from Earth, trapped in a place meant to crush hope. But he no longer felt trapped. His fists tightened. He would bring this whole place down if he had to. The remaining soldiers hesitated at the entrance, their weapons shaking. None dared to step closer. Daniel looked at them, his voice steady but carrying the weight of something larger than himself. "You wanted to measure us?" he said, his words low but sharp enough to cut through the alarms. "Now, measure this." He drove his fist into the floor, and the ground split with a thunderous crack. Sparks burst and the lights above shattered, plunging the chamber into darkness, lit only by the glow of stars. For the first time in their history, the overseers faced something their science could not define. Fear spread through their ranks faster than fire. They had seen humans survive pain, endure pressure, resist control, and now destroy their most advanced machines. The tests were over. Humanity had passed in a way they never wanted by breaking the very idea of the test itself. Daniel stood, tall, his body battered but unbroken. The path ahead was filled with unknown dangers, but he no longer felt alone. Every human across the stars carried the same spirit, the same refusal to be reduced to numbers. Broken door, into the vast darkness of space, one truth echoed louder than any alarm. The scale was gone. Humanity had moved beyond it.